Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett didn't hesitate for even a second when she claimed that Barron might not actually be Trump's child, but the real shock wasn't her words. It was the sudden appearance of sealed court records backing her claim. You could sense it, Devon, through the television. Tension was rising. The House Oversight Committee's hearing on presidential abuses of power was already running over an hour late. Most people had tuned out until Representative Jasmine Crockett leaned in, slowly took off her glasses, and called for quiet. Not from those sitting inside, but from the noise of outdated customs. Her voice didn't rise. Instead, it dropped lower, making the weight of her words feel even heavier. "I'm going to steer this conversation toward something that cuts right to the heart of integrity," she said, staring down the panel as though she already knew the storm she was about to unleash. A few committee members shifted nervously in their seats. Chair Ruben Geller visibly tensed up. Crockett wasn't following the planned script, at least not the one they'd agreed to beforehand. "This nation has spent far too long sheltering power at the cost of honesty. That ends today," she declared. A few people scoffed. Some raised their brows, but she pressed forward, calm and precise. "There are sealed records from an Arizona court, filed in 2019, files hidden behind legal tactics and, more significantly, political pressure," she continued. "These documents involve then-President Trump, a former staff member, and a minor." Now the room was dead silent. "I have a sworn statement from a federal contractor," she said, "who handled the digital destruction of certain documents flagged under the White House Correspondence Protection Act." She paused, lifting up a photocopy as the camera zoomed in. One document stood out. It referenced a payment of $3.1 million to a woman listed as TB. She paused again, flipping to another page. The only unredacted line reads, she said, "Paternity agreement non-disclosure enforced DNA results pending." Committee member Matt Overby jumped in, trying to cut her off. "Is this really appropriate right now?" he asked. But Crockett didn't budge. "The American people didn't vote for secrecy," she shot back. "They voted for honesty. If the president knew during his first term that Barron Trump wasn't biologically his and deliberately hid that to preserve his image, then we're facing a crisis that's not just legal, but deeply ethical," she said firmly. Now, it wasn't just a committee hearing, it was a political earthquake. CNN switched to it live. MSNBC followed. Even Fox stayed with the coverage. Across the country, phones buzzed as notifications exploded. TikTok clips surfaced within minutes, all tagged with the same chilling question: did Jasmine just say Barron isn't Trump's son? Inside the hearing room, whispers erupted into chaos. Overby slammed down his pen, calling for adjournment, but Crockett raised her voice for the first time. "We are not going to bury the truth simply because it makes the elite squirm," she shouted. "This isn't tabloid gossip. We're talking about justice, manipulated for personal gain." Representative Eleanor Vance tried to divert the discussion, muttering, "Let's leave the child out of this." But Crockett snapped back. "If you really cared about protecting the child, you wouldn't keep using him to shield power." The room exploded. Microphones stayed live. Then, suddenly, the House broadcast cut out for more than 3 minutes. Viewers at home thought it was just a glitch until someone leaked the unedited footage online. Trump's name was muted twice. The file Jasmine had referenced was flagged by Homeland Security within hours, but by then, the damage had already been done. That night, every major news outlet shattered ratings records. Journalists scrambled to confirm the identity of TB. Crockett didn't retreat. When a reporter caught her in the hallway and asked if she feared retaliation, her reply was ice cold and direct: "No, because I can prove everything I've said." The hearing resumed 22 minutes later, but no real discussion followed. The chamber wasn't debating anymore. It was unraveling. Some staffers refused to look her in the eye. Others simply left the room altogether. But something no one saw it on C-SPAN, not in the breaking news headlines, was that as Crockett returned to her office, she received a single text message on her private phone. It read only one word: "Finally." Meanwhile, inside the White House, panic was setting in. In the West Wing, a young staffer spilled iced coffee all over a printer, but nobody noticed. Every gaze was glued to the muted TV, bolted to the corner of the Roosevelt Room. Jasmine Crockett was still speaking, and the thick silence wasn't about the broadcast anymore. It was about what they feared was coming next. Across the hallway, Chief of Staff Brian Halford stood frozen, staring at the screen without blinking. The president had just left a trade meeting and was strolling toward them, half listening as an Aide rattled on about agricultural tariffs in Kansas. Then Trump saw Crockett's face on screen. "What's this?" he asked, gesturing toward the TV as he walked in. "Why is this on every channel?" No one answered fast enough. Trump turned sharply to Halford. "Brian, what the hell is going on?" Halford opened his mouth, then shut it again. Finally, he muttered, "Sir, she's talking about sealed files. About Barron." Trump's face froze, halfway between a sneer and a smirk, as if he couldn't decide whether to laugh or throw something. "She what?" he barked. The room went still. Someone nervously cleared their throat in the corner. Another aide slowly reached for the remote. "Don't touch that," Trump growled. He marched toward the TV, eyes narrowing just as Crockett said the word paternity. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then Trump spun round and shouted, "Get me the network. Now I want Peterson at CNN on the phone right now." An intern sprinted to make the call. Halford moved in carefully. "Sir, we may need a more calculated approach." "Calculated?" Trump snapped. "She just claimed on live TV that Barron isn't my son, and you're talking about strategy." Trump grabbed his phone off the table and dialed his personal attorney, Hope Sinclair, putting the call on speaker. "She can't say that that's defamation. I want a statement drafted. We sue her. We sue CNN. We sue everyone." Hope's voice remained steady. "Sir, defamation laws don't apply if the allegation turns out to be true." Trump's silence filled the room like smoke. Halford cautiously added, "We don't know exactly what she has, but we do know this. It's everywhere. Every media outlet's running it. Not a son is trending. TikTok has videos from multiple angles." Trump's hands were visibly shaking now. He didn't try to hide it. He turned the volume back up just in time to hear Crockett repeat her words. "If the president knew during his first term that Barron Trump was not biologically his and suppressed that truth to protect his reputation, then we face a crisis beyond legality. It's about morality." Trump hurled the remote at the wall. It shattered instantly. "This is all because of that damn agreement," he muttered under his breath. Halford's eyes narrowed. Now he knew there was an agreement. "How you known?" Halford asked, his voice quiet, almost human. Trump didn't reply. He looked over at Marjorie Klein, one of his most loyal advisors. "Get Melania on the phone," he ordered. "Sir, she's in Europe," Klein replied. "Then wake her up." Klein hesitated. "Do you really want to involve your wife in this right now?" But she stepped out to make the call anyway. Trump sank heavily into his chair at the end of the conference table, staring at the shattered remote pieces on the floor. "You think she's bluffing?" he asked the room, his voice barely audible. No one dared to answer. Finally, Hope Sinclair broke the silence. "The NDA is airtight," she said carefully. "But if Crockett really got her hands on that affidavit, then we have a leak, most likely from the Digital Archives office. We need to find that leak immediately, and we need to start preparing Barron." Hearing his son's name made Trump visibly recoil. "Leave him out of this," he muttered darkly. "The press won't," Sinclair replied flatly. Halford sat down across from Trump, locking eyes with him. "If we don't seize control of the next 24 hours, this becomes the election," he warned. Trump gave a small, distracted nod, but it was clear his mind was elsewhere. His thoughts drifted back to a hotel room in Washington, D.C., back in 2005, back to a crying woman, back to a signature scrawled beside an X. He had paid her off then. It vanished. Until now. "Tell the networks I'll be speaking live in 30 minutes, Trump ordered, his tone sharp again. "Sir, I'd recommend," Halford began. "I said 30. But before the cameras could even start rolling, Twitter had already anointed Jasmine Crockett as the face of the hour. In a quiet gas station parking lot near Dayton, Ohio, 42-year-old Lorna Peake had just finished pumping gas when her phone buzzed. With a news alert from the Associated Press, breaking, Representative Jasmine Crockett drops bombshell accusation about President Trump's marriage during live hearing. Normally, she ignored stories like that, but something about this headlines, something about how calm Crockett had appeared, made her pause. She tapped the video. The Loris clip began buffering. Inside the convenience store, the cashier already had it on CNN blasting from a tiny, flat screen mounted above the cigarette rack. By the time Crockett uttered the word paternity, Lorna's breath caught in her throat. In Seattle, 19-year-old Denzel Yates was watching from the break room inside the Apple store where he worked. His co-worker Dana paused mid-bite of her leftover Thai food. Wait, is she actually saying Trump isn't the father? She didn't say it, Denzel replied. She showed it. Clips were now everywhere on TikTok. The original live broadcast had crossed 2.3 million views in less than an hour, but one slowed-down version zoomed in on Crockett's fingers tightly holding the affidavit. Another showed Trump's shocked expression from an old rally, edited in dramatically. By 4 p.m., the hashtag #NotHisSon became the #1 trend globally on Twitter. Right beneath it was hashtag #CrockettTruth. Across the nation, people were debating wildly. In a high school cafeteria in Mesa, Arizona, a junior named Joaquin argued with his history teacher. "Does this even matter?" he asked. "It's his personal life." His teacher, Mrs. Roach, shook her head slowly. "If those papers are real, it's not just personal," she said. "It's deception, and that connects to public trust. If you hide something this huge, you're likely hiding more." In rural Pennsylvania, retired Marine Cal sat in his den watching Fox News. The anchor appeared uneasy. The network hadn't cut away, but their tone was shifting. Even therein, one of Trump's strongest bases doubt was spreading. What if it's true? Cal's wife, Teresa, whispered. Cal stayed silent. Outside a barber shop in Tallahassee, people were passing phones around. A man in a Raptors jersey asked, "You all think she made this up?" The barber slowly shook his head. "Nah," he said firmly. "She didn't even flinch. You saw her face. She's been holding this back for a while." Within just hours, public polls started shifting fast. A flash poll by Data Pulse asked, "Do you believe Jasmine Crockett's claim about President Trump and Baron Trump?" Yes, 48%, no, 33%, not sure, 19% for a country known for extreme division. That was massive. CNN replayed the video every hour. MSNBC brought in legal experts. Even Newsmax had to cover it, though they tried to spin it as a political stunt. But on TikTok and Instagram, Crockett's image was transforming in real time. Edits began to show her face alongside Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Shirley Chisholm. One viral post simply read, "She said it, on camera, in front of everyone, and didn't blink." Meanwhile, Donald Trump's live stream got postponed twice. Backstage, his staff argued fiercely. Would admitting it make things worse? Would ignoring it make him look weak? His press secretary issued a bland, pre-written statement accusing Republican Crockett of reckless character assassination, but it hardly got any traction. By now, the focus wasn't just on what she said, but why she said it now. Some called it carefully planned, others called it reckless, but the bigger question wasn't about timing anymore. It was about truth. That night, in Milwaukee, two college seniors broke it all down on their podcast for Gen Z listeners. "Look," said host Bianca Ford, "if she's lying, she's done for. But if she's telling the truth, that means the President of the United States used his power to hide a child's identity from the public for years. That's not drama, that's corruption." Calls poured into radio stations. Grandparents debated it over dinner tables. Teens filmed their reactions inside cars. Some called her brave, some called her disgusting, others simply couldn't stop watching it again and again. But through it all, Jasmine Crockett didn't issue any follow-up, no press conference, no press release, just a single tweet posted at 8:12 p.m. Truth has a way of surfacing when it's ready. She was calm, but the White House wasn't. Behind closed doors, the panic was boiling over. At almost 9:30 p.m., Jasmine Crockett walked into CNN's downtown DC studio. She looked exhausted but determined, like sleep wasn't a priority. No entourage. No flashy jewelry. Just a navy blazer, a sleek ponytail, and a folder clutched in her hands. Inside, the producers scrambled. This wasn't supposed to be a live broadcast, but the ratings were through the roof. Anderson Pike was already seated, nervously reviewing notes. He knew this might become the biggest interview of the year. "Congresswoman Crockett," he said as she walked in, standing with a stiff smile. "Thank you for making time." She nodded calmly. "I won't be long. I just want to make things clear." When the cameras went live, there was no music, no fancy intro. Just her face entered, steady-eyed. Pike tried to ease into it. "You've caused a political earthquake today, Congresswoman," he began. "Some say you crossed a line. Others say you exposed what no one else dared to. Why today?" Crockett paused, then said, "Because I wasn't elected to shield a man's secrets. I was elected to defend the people's right to truth even when it's uncomfortable. Pike glanced at his notes. You mentioned sealed documents and a payment tied to Baron Trump's birth. Do you have those files? I've seen them, she said. I have access through a whistleblower who requested anonymity for obvious reasons. I'm working with legal counsel to decide what can be safely made public. And to be clear, Pike asked carefully, you were saying on national television that President Trump knowingly hid the truth about Baron's paternity to protect his image. Crockett leaned forward slightly. I'm saying all the evidence I've reviewed strongly points to that conclusion, she replied. And I'm also saying his administration used government resources and DAs, legal threats, and hush money to keep it hidden. Backstage, producers nervously watched social media. The network's app kept crashing from high traffic. They hadn't seen numbers like this since the 2020 election. Pike looked visibly tense. You understand the stakes here, Congresswoman, he said. If you're wrong, I'm not. She cut in. Firmly. Silence filled the studio. Pike shifted gears. Some critics say you've dragged a child into the public spotlight, that it's unfair to Baron Trump. Crockett nodded, her expression serious. I agree. It is unfair, she said. But I didn't put him there, his father did. When you lie to the country to protect your family's image, it's your roof that collapses, not mine. Her voice remained calm steady. Pike pressed again. Do you think this changes the election's direction? No, she replied. But it changes how we judge character, and that's even more important. Back at the White House, Trump's media team was furious. They didn't expect her to go live so soon. And they certainly didn't expect her to sound so composed, controlled and yielding. She wasn't panicking, she wasn't speculating. She looked like someone who knew far more than she was revealing, and that terrified them. The CNN clip went viral within minutes. Within an hour, it had more than 12 million views. A journalist from the Baltimore Ledger tweeted, whether you believe her or not, Jasmine Crockett came armed with receipts and iron resolve. This wasn't a leak, it was a warning. By midnight, reporters were grilling other lawmakers. Many refused to comment. Some dodged the question. But then, Representative Lynette O'Connor from Oregon shocked everyone. I've seen some of what Representative Crockett referred to, she told a local news anchor, and I believe she's telling the truth. That quote sparked another wave of online chaos, because now it wasn't just Crockett. Someone else had seen it too. Meanwhile, Crockett was back at her Arlington apartment. She wasn't answering her phone. She wasn't checking Twitter. She just sat quietly on her couch, still wearing her shoes, staring at the folder across from her. Inside were more documents. Some she hadn't even mentioned. Yet, some she hoped she'd never need to reveal. But if forced, she was ready. While Jasmine sat in silence, another woman was about to be dragged into the firestorm she never wanted. In a quiet corner of El Sereno, California, 51-year-old Genevieve Larson pulled into her driveway just after 6 a.m. still wearing her blue nursing scrubs from her overnight shift. She hadn't even turned off the car's engine. Before her neighbor came rushing up the walkway, phone clutched tightly, breathless. You have to see this, she gasped. Genevieve narrowed her eyes at the screen, confused at first. Just a clip of Jasmine Crockett, sitting upright in a studio, voice steady but sharper woman, speaking under the alias TB. Genevieve's heart dropped. That name wasn't random. It was hers. Talia Breyer, the name she'd used in court, hidden behind a protective order she had prayed would never resurface. And now it was everywhere. Inside her house, Genevieve bolted the door, shut every curtain, and reached under the sink for the burner phone, hidden inside an old coffee can. It hadn't rung for over 4 years, but today, there were 4 missed calls and a single voicemail. Her lawyer's voice filled the room. Genevieve, I know you've seen it. Say nothing. I'm catching the next flight. We always knew this could happen. Stay put. Her hands trembled as she sat at the kitchen table. The silence in the house roared in her ears. Her son was away at college. For the first time in years, she wished he wasn't not for protection, but because she didn't want to face this nightmare alone. By midday, her name hadn't been made public, but the vultures were circling. Paparazzi vans were idling 2 streets over. Someone disguised as a delivery guy had knocked. Another slipped a note under her garage door. We know who you are. Talk to us first. Name your price. She didn't answer. Not yet. Her mind drifted back to 2005 to a hotel suite in Phoenix, where it all began. Back then, She'd been a surgical tech, young, ambitious, still believing in fresh starts. She'd met Trump at a charity dinner, introduced by a friend of a friend. He wasn't exactly charming, but he was confident, persuasive. The kind of man who made you feel that saying no would be the biggest mistake of your life. 8 months later, she had a baby and a secret that could shatter everything. She told him. He shrugged at first. "I'm not the guy," he said, with a smirk. Then came the lawyers. Then came the settlement talks. He never signed the birth certificate, but he signed the check and the NDA. Genevieve used that money to escape. New name, new town, new life. It had almost worked until Jasmine Crockett spoke her name without saying it. By then, Crockett's team had already made contact at secureline.com, but serious, no pressure, just a warning. Reporters were closing in. A journalist from DC had already narrowed it down to 5 women. Calls were going out. Genevieve knew her time was almost up. Her lawyer, Harris Noland, landed in Oakland by late afternoon and came straight to her door. "They'll try to break you," he warned, sitting across from her at the same kitchen table where she'd once packed her son's lunches. "I know," she whispered. "You don't owe them anything." She looked him straight in the eyes. "But I owe her something." "Crockett." Harris nodded. Genevieve stood, pulled out a red folder from the kitchen cabinet. Inside, copies of court documents, emails from Trump's legal team, proof of a paternity test request that Trump never answered. "I don't want cameras," she said. "No interviews. I just want the truth out there." Harris studied her carefully. "Then we do it your way. A written statement, through a paper like the Ledger or the Guardian somewhere, that won't twist it." She nodded slowly. "And I want people to know. I didn't ask for this, but I won't pretend it didn't happen." By nightfall, Genevieve's name still hadn't leaked, but the right people knew exactly who she was. At 7:02 p.m., a Washington Post journalist sent her a message asking for comment. 10 minutes later, another message appeared. "We know you're the woman Jasmine referred to. I'd like to hear your side before others write it for you." Genevieve shut her laptop. Tomorrow, she would decide. But as she found her voice again, far away, in a dim newsroom in St. Louis, an old-school journalist was following a thread no one else had spotted yet. In that cramped office, Conrad Wells sat staring at his glowing monitor, eyes burning from the harsh blue light. He wasn't young or flashy. He didn't chase viral stories. But when the Crockett story broke, something gnawed at him, not the scandal itself, but the quiet between the chaos. He leaned back in his squeaky chair, cracked his knuckles, and opened a folder on his desktop labeled NDA Patterns 2017. He'd followed Trump for years, but not like cable networks did. He watched money trails, payments, property filings, offshore accounts. After Crockett's statement, he remembered a weird note he'd flagged 5 years back, a wire transfer from a Trump-linked shell company to an Arizona LLC called Red Lantern Diagnostics. Nobody had cared. Then it was hidden deep in a quarterly report. Now, he typed quickly, "Red Lantern Diagnostics, Arizona, paternity testing, court filings, 2019. A sealed court record appeared from Maricopa County. Most of it was blocked from view, but the docket showed a case, TB versus JD, T. John Donald Trump. No judgment attached, just a withdrawal and a note of private settlement." Conrad's eyes narrowed. He called in a favor from an old courthouse clerk he'd helped before. 30 minutes later, she whispered through the phone. There was an affidavit sealed within hours of filing. "You're not the first asking about it today." "Who else?" he asked. She hesitated. "Private lawyers, not press." He wrote it down. Crockett's team had gone silent, clever, cautious, but that wouldn't stop him from digging. Next, he rang a contact at a medical courier in Tempe, someone who'd handled private lab runs in 2019. One of their drivers had logged a pickup from Red Lantern Diagnostics destination DC-overnight. Sender, Genevieve Larson. There it was. Conrad didn't publish it. Not yet. But now, he knew Crockett wasn't speculating. She had evidence, and likely documents to back it up. By day's end, Conrad had the woman's name, the timeline, the paper trail, and a story no one else had touched. He emailed Crockett's office directly, just one sentence. "I know about Red Lantern. If this is real, it's bigger than scandal. It's systemic abuse of power. I don't care about being first. I care about being right." An hour later, a reply came. "We're listening." Brief, but it told him everything. They weren't panicking. They were getting ready. Still, The truth wasn't only in DC. He began digging through FEC filings, searching for legal expenses marked as consulting or discretionary services. He found 3 Cecil, mid-2020, labeled legal risk mitigation, 2 lead to familiar law firms. The third, a small Arizona firm, G. Noland and Associates, Genevieve's lawyer. It all lined up. At 10:17 p.m., Conrad sat down at his desk, cracked open a lukewarm Dr. Pepper, and began typing the first draft of an article that would define his career. He didn't lead with the child. He didn't lead with the money. He led with the cover -up. Silence in a democracy eats us from within. This isn't scandal. It's about the machinery built to crush those it fears. He filed the draft, awaiting legal clearance, but deep down, he knew the dam had already cracked. What Crockett had sparked wasn't a stunt. It was a spark, and by morning, it would ignite every newsroom in America. But as Conrad prepped for publication, the White House was falling apart behind closed doors by 7 a.m. The West Wing was in meltdown. Legal aides sprinted from room to room, phones pressed tight to their ears. Exhausted staffers stayed overnight, too shaken to go home or even change clothes. The press office whiteboard had been wiped, rewritten, and wiped again. Nobody had a plan that lasted more than 10 minutes. Trump hadn't spoken publicly since Crockett's hearing, but inside the White House, he wasn't quiet. In the Roosevelt room, tie askew, hair ruffled, he barked into the speakerphone, "Find that woman. The one Crockett named. I want everything, her school records, her work history, all of it." An aide replied on the call, "Sir, we believe her name is Genevieve Larkinson. She changed it in 2010. There's a sealed court file." "I don't care about court," Trump snapped. "I care about the story. Find her, discredit her." Hope Sinclair and Claire, his legal advisors, exchanged uneasy glances across the room. Even they weren't sure this could be contained anymore, because this wasn't just about one woman. It was about the entire system built to protect the illusion behind closed doors. The press team was collapsing. A young speechwriter had broken down in tears after Sinclair shouted at her for suggesting they admit to a minor lapse in judgment. Another staffer spilled coffee on her notes while printing a statement that never got read. Nobody knew who was in charge anymore. Trump kept changing his mind by the hour, and then, at exactly 8 a.m. came the leak. A clip first appeared on a private news Discord server, then showed up on Reddit within minutes. Though the audio was fuzzy, the voices of Hope and Claire were clear. "If the affidavit leaks, we're done. We can't cover up a paternity dodge." That DNA order wasn't ignored, it was sidestepped. The clip spread like wildfire. Cable news anchors scrambled to confirm it. It was rough, unverified, but voice experts matched it with public footage in less than an hour. The timeline also aligned. Later that morning, Sinclair got cornered by a Fox reporter in a hallway. She didn't deny the voice, just kept walking. Inside the Oval Office, Trump was losing it. "She taped me," he muttered. "No, sir," Holford answered calmly. "She taped herself, probably during a call." "Same thing," Trump snapped. Halford stayed quiet. At 10 a.m., Trump held a secure video call with First Lady Melania Trump, who was still in Geneva at a youth wellness summit. Her face was calm but cold. "You told me it was handled," she said softly. "It was," he replied, "until that woman came back." Melania didn't react. "You should have told me everything, not bits and pieces." Trump's voice softened. "This doesn't need to change anything. Barron's still our son." She blinked, lips tight. "No, Donald, he's my son." The call ended soon after. Meanwhile, in the press room, reporters circled like sharks. They kept asking, had the president seen the affidavit Jasmine Crockett mentioned? Was there a DNA test submitted by Donald Trump in 2019? Had the administration buried court records through internal pressure? The press secretary stuck to her script, reading from a prepared statement. "The president strongly denies all false claims about his family and sees these attacks as a shameful political stunt." But it didn't stick. Even insiders started whispering. A mid-level staffer anonymously told the Philadelphia Review, "We've known about the red file since 2020. It was kept in the top right drawer of Halford's cabinet. Anyone who brought it up was told to focus on the campaign." When the article hit at noon, Twitter exploded again. People weren't just reacting, they were picking sides. Even conservative circles began murmuring. Republican strategist Janelle Christian went on PBS saying, This isn't about party lines anymore. This is about covering up power with lies. If Crockett's claims are legit, we must face them head-on. Inside the White House, the trusted circle kept shrinking. Sinclair was already working on her resignation letter. Halford stopped returning press calls altogether. Only Trump kept trying to keep control, but even he was cracking. He barked orders and demanded loyalty. But now, people hesitated before. Obeying because truth had started leaking, and there was no way to patch up the cracks. But the biggest crack wasn't inside the White House walls. It sat hidden in a judge's drawer in Phoenix, and that file was about to come out. 2 floors below street level, in the dusty basement of the Maricopa County Family Court in Phoenix, Judge Rosanna Vitarelli sat staring at an envelope she hadn't touched in 5 years. It was marked confidential, sealed by order. Case TB versus JDT. She remembered the day it arrived, the urgent filing, the panicked clerk, and the rare call from a senior federal judge warning her to seal it for national security reasons. It sounded ridiculous back then, but the pressure felt real. The memo had been signed by then Attorney General Jerome Beck. She didn't ask questions. Judges learn early how to read between the lines. But this case stuck with her like a thorn. Now, with Jasmine Crockett putting it in the spotlight, it came rushing back. Judge Vitarelli slowly traced the envelope's edge with her thumb. She was 67 now, just weeks from retiring. She'd seen thousands of cases, custody disputes, name changes, restraining orders, but this one haunted her. It never had a conclusion. Inside was the original paternity petition, signed by Genevieve Larson under her alias, Talia Bree. 5 documents were attached. One was a DNA test request order addressed to Donald J. Trump, stamped for service. The others were responses from Trump's lawyers, delaying the test, citing scheduling issues, and finally filing to dismiss it because of extraordinary executive duties. But there was no DNA result. The test had never been done. Judge Vitarelli picked up her phone and called her former clerk, now a civil rights attorney in Flagstaff. "Are you watching the news?" she asked. "Hard to miss," the voice answered. "Remember the 2019 case I told you about during drinks? You kept it sealed. I still have it." Silence. "You're thinking about unsealing it?" Judge Vitarelli exhaled. "I'm thinking about what I should have done back then before I let the pressure get to me." Elsewhere in Phoenix, another story was breaking. An anonymous insider leaked an internal court memo to the Arizona Sentinel. The memo showed Trump's legal team had filed a formal objection to block any DNA testing. The wording was technical, but one line stood out. "Client refuses DNA testing. Counsel suggests alternative settlement, private payment, gag order, immediate file sealing." It mirrored Crockett's claims almost exactly. Back in Washington, the moment the Sentinel story hit, CNN cut off a live panel mid-discussion. Host Anderson Pike sat stunned as his producer whispered the news in his earpiece. "Say that again," he asked on air. The message came through again. An Arizona judge had ordered a DNA test. Trump refused. The test never happened. The panel froze. "So," Pike said slowly, "there's no DNA confirmation. No denial either. Just avoidance." Within minutes, #NoDNA was trending. People didn't need legal details. They understood avoidance. And it hurt. Inside the White House, chaos returned. Hope Sinclair had vanished. Brian Halford was locked in with Trump, explaining how a 5-year-old court memo from Arizona had exploded into national headlines. Trump wasn't shouting anymore. He was quiet, too quiet. "How'd they get that memo?" he asked, staring at the floor. "They didn't," Halford replied. "Someone leaked it. A clerk, a lawyer, maybe even the judge." Trump grunted. "She swore to keep it sealed." Halford didn't remind him that promises don't mean much when a judge faces the truth in her. Final weeks on the bench. Across America, the mood was shifting. This wasn't some distant political scandal anymore. It was messy, personal, and painfully real. People asked, if he had nothing to hide, why dodge the test? In a Tulsa hair salon, as a woman got her braids tightened, she muttered, "It's always the lies that ruin them, not the act the lies." In Minneapolis, a college student tweeted, "I don't care about the father. I care that the president used the court like his private broom closet." Even conservative voices began crumbling. One retired GOP advisor said on live radio, "I'm not saying it's true, but the way they're dancing around it looks bad." Silence is louder than the accusation. Meanwhile, Judge Vitarelli placed one last call to Jasmine Crockett's office. No assistant, no voicemail. She was patched through directly. "Congresswoman Crockett," the judge said, "this is Rosanna Vitarelli. I have something you'll want to see." But as Crockett prepared for what was coming, Americans everywhere braced themselves, not just politically, but morally. By the time Good Morning America read the Arizona court memo live on air, the country wasn't just watching the story anymore. It was living it. In a diner in Des Moines, Iowa, breakfast talk about corn futures and weather turned into heated debates about truth, loyalty, and being lied to by the nation's most powerful man. 2 booths apart, an older couple argued with a younger man wearing a Carhartt hoodie. "I don't care who fathered that boy," the older man grumbled, stirring his coffee. "This smells like a smear job." The younger man leaned in. "You really think he didn't block the test? There's proof, sealed files, NDAs, all of it." He ran from the truth, same way he runs from everything else. Down south, in Mobile, Alabama, a church parking lot became a makeshift debate circle. Pastor Carl Denson had just finished morning prayer when a deacon texted him, "Turn on the TV." When he did, Crockett's face filled the screen again, this time walking up the Capitol steps, flanked by aides and carrying a plain manila folder. By 10 a.m., the Washington Ledger reported that her team had filed a federal request to unseal even more documents. The wording was sharp. "This matter now falls under national interest. Suppressing truth under executive privilege violates ethical governance." Voter reactions were instant. Some districts saw spontaneous protests. People holding homemade signs demanded openness outside state capitals in Utah, Missouri, and Pennsylvania. But the pushback wasn't just from one side. In Birmingham, Trump supporters gathered outside a local TV station right after it aired. The memo headline, "A woman, dressed in a sequined flag shirt, yelled through a bullhorn, 'This is exactly what happens when they can't beat him at the polls. They go after his family instead.'" Across the city, just half an hour later, a group of college students led a quiet march, their signs saying things like "Truth over image" and "We deserve honest leaders." In coffee shops, classrooms, workplaces, and on buses, people chose sides. Meanwhile, in Gary, Indiana, Patrice Kinley, a single mom, sat on her couch with her 15-year-old daughter. Both were watching the news like it was happening right in their home. "Why didn't he just take the test?" her daughter asked softly. Patrice shook her head. "Sweetheart, when someone lies long enough, even the truth feels like a threat." In Philadelphia, Professor Hugo Brin led an open forum in his American ethics class. He wrote just one question on the board: "Does personal truth matter in public service?" What followed was nearly 3 hours of some of the most raw and honest discussion he had witnessed in years. One student cried, another walked out angrily. Herself hadn't spoken since the phone call from Judge Vitarelli. She was preparing not just legally, but emotionally. Because this wasn't simply a political bombshell. It was about how Americans see their leaders and whether that image had ever been real to begin with. At a town hall in Bakersfield, California, Representative Lynette O'Connor faced her own backlash. A conservative voter stood and shouted, "You people are ripping this country apart with gossip." She didn't yell back. She calmly asked, "Is it gossip if it's documented in court records?" The man had no answer. Even international media caught on. A British news anchor called it the biggest paternity question since Jefferson. In Canada, late-night comedians walked a fine line between humor and shock. And in Brazil, one anchor remarked, "In America, power fears truth more than defeat." But in Washington, something else was changing polling numbers. A new survey revealed Crockett's approval had surged by 18 points among independent voters, especially those under 40. Trump's loyal base stayed strong, but undecided voters were now leaning toward what many were calling the honesty faction. Though Crockett didn't hold a press conference, her office confirmed one thing to the Columbus Herald: Judge Vitarelli's envelope was now in their hands. Online, reactions were immediate. "She isn't finished, she's just preparing the next strike," one comment read in a Facebook group for political science students. One line stood out: "Crockett isn't taking him down with noise, she's taking him down with paperwork." But this wasn't just about Trump anymore. It became about America itself, how the nation reacts when the truth isn't whispered in secret, but revealed publicly with receipts. And while the nation stayed glued to their screens, final move was already set in motion. The move meant to bring absolute clarity. leaving no space for misinterpretation that it was just past 3 p.m. when Jasmine Crockett stepped out of a silver sedan and walked toward the press podium outside the Capitol. No media alerts had gone out, no barricades, no special passes, just a few dozen reporters waiting based on a single rumor. She's going to speak. She didn't bring aides, no sunglasses, no lawyer at her side, just the same manila folder everyone had seen her carrying earlier that day when she stood at the podium. The crowd quieted. "My name is Jasmine Crockett," she began, "and I'm not here to repeat myself. I'm here to end the guessing." She pulled one paper from the folder and held it up. "This is the original 2019 DNA test order sealed by the court. Never fulfilled, never contested publicly, only buried." Cameras clicked. Reporters leaned in. "What you've heard in recent days isn't speculation. It isn't entertainment. It isn't political theater. It's a record. One that Americans should have seen long ago." Someone shouted, "Congresswoman, will you release the full affidavit?" She paused, then answered, "I'm submitting it unredacted to the House Ethics Committee, the Department of Justice, and the Public Record Office. I won't redact it. I won't hide behind legal tricks." Another reporter asked, "Are you worried this could hurt you politically?" She gave the slightest smile. "The truth doesn't backfire. It only burns where it should." Silence fell again. That evening, the documents were published in full by multiple outlets. No paywalls, no editorializing, just documents. The NDA, the DNA test request, the skipped court hearings, the financial settlements, and an internal memo showing Trump's legal team advised evasion at all costs. Now, it was undeniable. He hadn't just ignored the test, he had buried it with power and money. CNN aired a primetime feature called The Truth Test: What Crockett's Files Reveal About Power and Protection. MSNBC followed with The Price of Image: How Silence Shielded the Presidency. Even Fox News, under pressure from insiders, reluctantly held a debate over whether Trump's denials could still be trusted. But the impact wasn't just in news cycles. In Lincoln, Nebraska, a middle school civics teacher rewrote his entire lesson plan after a student asked, "Can a president lie and still be a good leader?" In Las Vegas, a Republican councilwoman resigned from a campaign committee, saying, "I can't ask others to back a man who dodged a test my husband would have taken without hesitation." In Baltimore, Genevieve Larkinson finally spoke. She released a 2-page statement: "No cameras, no interviews, just words. I didn't ask for this attention, but I'm not ashamed anymore. I stayed silent thinking it would protect my son, but I've realized silence only shields the wrong people. I thank Congresswoman Crockett for doing what I couldn't." Her son, now a college student, issued his own short statement: "My mum told the truth. That's all that matters." And still, Crockett didn't gloat. No book deals, no media tours, no bragging. She simply returned to work. Within a week, she introduced two new bills: one to stop executive interference in state court cases, and another to create legal ways to reopen sealed settlements involving public officials. Neither passed right away, but they were officially filed. In plain sight, in ink. And to many Americans, that alone meant something. As for Trump, the damage stuck. His legal team scrambled, but donors backed away. Independent voters shifted. Even former insiders like Sinclair and Halford quietly started cooperating with ethics committees. One senior aide reportedly said, "Crockett didn't do this to him, he did this to himself." She just revealed a story he tried to erase. As for Crockett, she never said, "I told you so." She just kept showing up, because that was the point all along. This wasn't about proving someone was dishonest. It was about proving that even inside the most guarded halls of power, truth can still break through if someone stands firm while everything else shakes. And as the cameras faded from her last press appearance, her words lingered. "Your image is what you present. Your truth is what you live with." I didn't come to Congress to protect images, I came to protect the truth. If this story moved you, if it made you think, question, or see things differently, subscribe for more, because the stories we tell decide the world we live in. Let's make sure we tell the right ones.